My name is Clara Hastings, and I am a 30-year-old woman living in the small, picturesque town of Eagle Ridge. This town is where I grew up, surrounded by its stunning mountains and serene lakes that reflect the clear blue sky. I have always embraced the tranquility of my surroundings, spending my days painting landscapes that capture the beauty of this place. I am known for my vibrant art and my approachable nature. I teach watercolor painting classes to children at the local community center, and I volunteer at the animal shelter. People in town often see me as the kind, creative spirit who has an everlasting smile and a listening ear. However, beneath this cheerful facade lies a problem that has been eating away at me for far too long. Ever since high school, I had a close friend named Sarah. We shared everything: secrets, dreams, and laughter. We were inseparable until she betrayed me in a way that shattered our friendship entirely. Sarah had always been passionate about journalism, and she dreamed of making it big one day. One fateful afternoon, while I was in a vulnerable state, I confided in her about my struggle with self-doubt and the pressure I put on myself to succeed in my art career. I thought she would be a support system, but instead, she used my insecurities as fodder for her writing. She published an article in the local newspaper that exposed my private battles with anxiety and self-worth, painting me as a cautionary tale for aspiring artists. The article went viral, and suddenly I became the laughingstock of Eagle Ridge. My art was criticized, my kindness was questioned, and the small bubble of happiness I had was burst. I wanted to confront Sarah and ask her why she had done it, but by the time I gathered the courage, she had vanished. She moved to a bigger city, pursuing her journalism dream while I remained, shrouded in shame and disappointment. I had to rebuild my life alone, finding a way to silence the whispers that echoed in my mind. I threw myself into my work, painting frantically to drown out the humiliation. While my outward world was slowly healing with each brushstroke, my internal world was still haunted by betrayal. I decided that it was time to face my demons and find a way to take back my power. My first attempt at vengeance was to talk to a few friends about how I felt. I was telling them stories about Sarah's betrayals, but instead of healing, I found myself in a cycle of gossip that only fueled the fire of animosity towards her. I decided to channel my pain into a new project, a series of paintings that would express the raw emotions I had allowed myself to bury. However, after finishing a few pieces, I entered them into a local exhibition, hoping they would heal not just me, but others who might have felt betrayed. Instead of solace, I was met with heartbreak. Sarah, unbeknownst to me, had visited during the gallery opening. I caught a glimpse of her through the crowd, and my heart raced. She seemed triumphant, even smug as she sauntered through the exhibition, whispering to visitors about how she had inspired my latest works. I felt the ground fall from beneath my feet, and in a moment of fury, I confronted her. But to my dismay, she laughed it off, saying she couldn't recall any shared moments worth mentioning. That was my lowest point. I had dedicated those paintings to expressing my vulnerabilities, yet she dismissed them as irrelevant. I left the gallery feeling even more lost and defeated than before, convinced that my efforts to reclaim my narrative were worthless. But I refused to be defeated forever. I began to plan a more calculated approach to get my revenge. It was time to expose Sarah for the person she truly was. I started gathering bits of her life online, digging into her social media, and searching for any dirt I could find. Days turned into weeks as I meticulously compiled evidence of her fabricated stories and embellished truths. I discovered that she often misrepresented her journalism, allows her to earn respect in her field, even going so far as to gain favor with powerful contacts by twisting narratives to fit her agenda. With each new piece of information, a sense of satisfaction started to fill me. I was no longer the victim waiting for pity. I was transforming into a strategist bent on revealing her true nature. As the days dragged on, I finally crafted an email that would forever change the course of our lives. I contacted a rival newspaper in her city and laid out all the evidence I had gathered. I knew that this would not only damage her reputation, but also jeopardize her ability to build a career that relied on authenticity. Sending that email felt exhilarating. I had taken back control and turned the tables in a way that felt just. For weeks after that, I waited, anxious about the outcome of my actions. It was silent at first, giving me a false sense of peace. Then, suddenly, it happened. Sarah's name was all over the news for all the wrong reasons. Reports surfaced detailing her unethical practices in journalism, with multiple sources commenting on her questionable ethics. It was as if my actions had initiated a chain reaction. People began to speak out, and her once glorified image crumbled before the very public that once admired her. I felt an exhilaration like I had never known. My vengeance was retributive justice in my eyes. However, even as I reveled in her downfall, I could not shake the feeling that this was not a victory worth celebrating. My friends began to treat me differently, unsure of how to react to the news. I overheard conversations where they would mention my involvement in the scandal. Soon, whispering doubts began to circle around me. This new reality was growing heavier, and it felt as if I had trapped not just Sarah but myself in a maze of lies and regrets. I was no longer the victim of betrayal, but now I was the villain in my own story. I realized that winning at any cost had a considerable price. I had pushed so far into revenge that I completely forgot my initial goal of healing. My happiness wavered, replaced by a hollowness that echoed through my art and my relationships. In a moment of clarity, I made my final attempt to settle the score, not with Sarah, but with myself. I traveled back to the gallery where I had first clashed with her. The walls bore witness to my pain and struggle, and it was time to reclaim my narrative for good. I stood in front of my paintings, vividly illustrating the journey I had undertaken. I invited a small group of friends and family, and I shared my entire story with them, revealing my raw emotions, my hatred, and my vulnerability. This time, I did not mask my struggles. I laid them bare, showing the truths of betrayal and the weakness of revenge. My confession brought tears to my friends' eyes. Instead of judging me, they embraced me, seeing the frailty in my story that they had not previously understood. In that moment, I felt lighter, realizing that revenge had only burdened my heart further. I decided I no longer wanted to hold on to the negativity. I wanted to forgive Sarah, not because I excused what she did, but because it freed me from the shackles of anger. I may never understand why Sarah chose to betray me, but I now have the tools to write my own story and define who I am as an artist and an individual. I have turned my pain into beauty and expressed my journey through my art. As for Sarah, I heard through the grapevine that she eventually moved away, losing her edge in the journalism world and chasing after a reputation that no longer mattered. Hearing this did not bring me joy. Instead, it fueled a profound sense of empathy. The consequences of revenge did not bring me fulfillment, yet it did lead me to rediscover myself. Now, I embrace a different normal. My focus has shifted back to painting and teaching, nurturing authentic connections rather than letting negativity consume me. I have found joy once again in my work, channeling my experiences into thriving landscapes. The irony of life is that sometimes, in what feels like a loss, we discover who we truly are. I learned that vengeance does not heal, it merely prolongs the pain. Moving forward, I chose to be an artist and a woman of resilience, and I found true freedom in forgiveness.